by registering to vote at one address while actually living with her then husband and children at another. They've already questioned whether she should have paid capital gains tax on the profit she made when she sold her house in 2015. Ms Rayner says she has since received legal advice that said she didn't owe any tax, although she's refused to publish it. Sir Keir Starmer said he was fully confident that his deputy had not broken the rules. Labour hopes she will soon be vindicated, putting an end to an issue which has dogged the party for weeks.
A former American diplomat has been jailed for 15 years by a federal court in Miami after he admitted spying for Cuba. Victor Manuel Rocha served on the US National Security Council in the 1990s and was Washington's ambassador to Bolivia. Will Grant reports.
It has been clear for some weeks that Manuel Rocha intended to formally change his plea from not guilty to guilty, in effect admitting to having worked as a Cuban spy for decades. He was detained last year following a sting operation in which an undercover FBI agent, posing as a Cuban government contact, covertly recorded Rocha calling the United States the enemy, praising the Cuban Revolution, and boasting of his decades working undetected as a foreign agent. Since his arrest, the US government has been trying to work out exactly how much sensitive material he sent to his Cuban handlers and assess the damage he caused.
The German Chancellor Olaf Scholz is beginning a 3-day visit to China. It's expected that Mr. Scholz will be pressed not to back possible EU measures on car parts and wind turbine equipment, which the EU has claimed are being dumped cheaply in its market. China is Germany's biggest partner. The Chancellor is being accompanied by executives from German firms including Siemens and Mercedes. The charity Carers UK is warning that tens of thousands of people who juggle looking after a loved one with working may be forced to cut their hours. It says recent increases in pay and the national living wage could put some people who claim carers allowance in breach of an earnings limit. In some cases, claimants have had to repay thousands of pounds in benefits. Here's Dan Whitworth from Radio 4's Moneybox programme.
Nearly 1 million people across the UK get carers allowance. It's worth just over £80 per week. Of those, around 175,000 work alongside caring for a loved one. But an earnings limit means they can't take home more than £151 per week. If they do, even by a few pence, they lose the lot. Carers UK says recent pay rises and a near 10% jump in the national living wage means some carers face having to cut their hours or risk losing the allowance. Two former pensions ministers also say the DWP should stop demanding repayments from carers who've unwittingly earned above that limit. The DWP says it's right to recover taxpayers' money when claimants haven't told it about changes in circumstance, and those in low-income households may be eligible for extra support.
The Italian fashion designer Roberto Cavalli has died at the age of 83. He was renowned for his animal prints and flamboyant creations, first worn in the 1970s by Sophia Loren and Brigitte Bardot, and later by Victoria Beckham and Jennifer Lopez. His lifestyle was as loud as his prints. He owned racehorses, Ferraris, and a metallic purple super yacht on which he frequently hosted the rich and famous. Giorgio Armani said Roberto Cavalli was a true artist whose Tuscan verve will be missed. That's the BBC News now. Before we decide what to grab from the wardrobe today, let's have a word from Simon King.
Yeah, thanks, Chris. I think for the southeast of England today, you'll be grabbing the summer clothes because temperatures once again will be up to about 19 to 21 degrees Celsius after yesterday's warmest of the year so far, 21 degrees in London yesterday. There'll be some sunny spells in the south and east today, but a bit more cloud into this afternoon. Further north and west across England and Wales, varying amounts of cloud this morning. Some rain affecting parts of West Wales and the Pennine region around about lunchtime into the early part of this afternoon. It should mostly clear away. There'll be some sunny spells developing here, but it will feel chillier compared to recent days with temperatures going down to about 13 to 16 degrees Celsius. It's also going to chillier across Scotland and Northern today. There'll be a bit of sunshine this morning across the eastern areas of Scotland, but generally speaking quite cloudy with some rain moving its way in through much of north and western Scotland into the Northern Ireland. It will tend to move its way southeast, but then there'll be some sunny spells, some showers following. Those will be heavy and thundery, and temperatures of 9 to 14 Celsius.
Many thanks, Simon. Now a look at the papers, and several of them feature images of Angela Rayner on their front pages. after the Deputy Labour leader said she would resign if she was found to have broken electoral law over her living arrangements. She has repeatedly denied any wrongdoing. The Mirror says the defiant MP has vowed to clear her name, adding that she accused the Conservatives of reporting her to the police to distract from their record. The paper's leader column agrees and accuses the Tories of preferring to brawl in the political gutter than fight the next election on which party will be best for Britain. The Times suggests Sir Keir Starmer's handling of what he calls this toxic affair has been naive, petulant and ham-fisted. The Sun questions why Ms Rayner has not stood down immediately, as she called for Boris Johnson to do when he was being investigated for lockdown parties. The Daily Mail says claims that Ms Rayner is being smeared because she's working class, a woman and a northerner are all utter claptrap, of course. The Chancellor has told the Express that Britain has done the hard yards and the government is now ready to cut taxes and bet on growth. Writing in the paper, Jeremy Hunt says the economy is bouncing back and it's time to release the handbrake by cutting taxes that hold back growth. The Express's leader column says Mr Hunt and Rishi Sunak have shown they have what it takes to steer the UK through truly treacherous economic waters, and the Chancellor is absolutely right to be optimistic about the future. The front page of The Sun nods to one of Gordon Ramsay's TV shows, revealing that the celebrity chef is facing a kitchen nightmare after a gang of squatters used cooking appliances to barricade themselves inside his London pub. The paper says the brazen invaders have slapped a legal notice to the Grade 2 listed York and Albany pub near Regent's Park, threatening action against anyone who tries to force them out. A source is quoted saying that Gordon Ramsay called the police on Wednesday and is trying to secure an eviction notice, but it's proving an absolute nightmare. That's our look at the papers. More in the Today programme from 7 o'clock. Now though on Radio 4, it's Open Country. And this week, Helen Mark takes a walk down a notoriously perilous pathway in Essex.
I feel a sense of trepidation as I embark on this open country. I'm just outside Great Wakering on the southeast coast of Essex. I'm about 6 miles from the seaside town of Southend-on-Sea. I crossed a vast open landscape which was used by the Military of Defence for training, and I came to the seawall. I climbed up over the top to what's called the Wakering Stairs, and I look out across this immense expanse of sand and water as the Thames estuary flows in and out of the North Sea. So why the trepidation? Well, to step out onto Britain's deadliest footpath. This is the Broomway.
All okay? The mud adjacent to us either side from the seawall for the next 500 metres is soft, so you could get stuck with your boots and so forth. Beyond that, it is firm. You could ride a bike on it, a car on it, whatever you like. Bear in mind that the military do drop ordnance in places and make pit holes that you can't see, so they've got no bottom to them. On the rare occasion you could get caught out. So you have to get 500 metres out before we reach what's known as the Broomway, which was marked with broom every 30 metres. And that was the responsibility of the landowner to make sure they were kept in place, because in the event of fog, bad weather conditions, you'll get lost. And
So are you saying that this firmer sand path was completely natural and it was found and used and marked by the local people of the area with broomsticks?
yes, definitely. It was the law that they had to have the upkeep, because if over the years several hundred people have died through adverse conditions.
Is that why it's called Britain's deadliest footpath?
I suppose so.
I mean, it seems obvious what the danger is because we're in the middle of the flipping Thames, but you know what I mean?
The biggest threat is fog, because once you get down to losing the sight of the shore, and you'll forget you're 600-700 metres from the shore, so the biggest threat is fog.
Right, okay. Well, John Burrows, local man, lives on Foulness Island, where we are heading. I think I and my fellow walkers are all in good company. So we follow you and make sure we don't, well, stray from the Broomway path.
Well, Foulness, the Macklins, should I say, is a fantastic place, awesome sights, but nature has her own way, and you've got to be aware of that. So we will not abuse it.
So we've got John, local man, and Peter Carr, you're a local Foulness man yourself?
Well, I've moved on about 30 years ago.
Yeah.
Yes.
That's good as.
Yeah. And between us, we run the local heritage centre, and we welcome people in during the summertime.
Another 100 metres on, we're going to come across some of the original paths, because at the moment we're actually on the man-made concrete path. And what we have here, beside and underneath the rubble, is hazel thatchings, which the Romans used.
They used
not
this
the-
pathway that
Oh,
we are
yes,
going to go
yeah,
on.
yes,
It's that
yes.
old.
Yeah.
The need to walk out to the island has
The
been
need-
since then.
Yes, the need to get horse and cart out to the barge, in those days the Roman galleons, because there was a tremendous amount of salt here. And very wealthy, obviously, salt, you know.
What a story.
Yeah, if you think about it, the salt reduction by the process of evaporation, you take the seawater, you put it in a sort of like brick systems, evaporate it either by sunlight or by fire. And if you think about this area, you've got Rochester sort of to the south,
Looking over to Kent.
Yeah, which is a good Roman town. You've got Colchester around the coast, and of course you've got London up the Thames. So you've got three big centres of Roman population, all demanding salt.
And they walked. We're walking in their footsteps.
Indeed. Yeah.
The weed you can see on the sands there is called Zostra. That is the major source for the Brent geese when they arrive from Russia in October. So there'll be 10,000 Brent and 5,000 widgeon that will feed on that, and that will stretch for 10 miles by 200 metres deep. But they'll devour that in 2 months and then move on.
The sound. Oh gosh. The sound under our feet now is.
In water, drag your feet.
Oh yes. It doesn't like your
Otherwise-
legs so much.
And otherwise you just have to drag your feet. Once you get out of it, go into normal stuff again.
Oh gosh, my foot sunk a bit deep there. There it goes again. Now the mud that we are walking off, this light brown, sludgy, sticky mud, which is patterned, you know, as the tide has gone out, it's left all these ridges. And then there's pools of water. Those pools of water are becoming more frequent, aren't they now, John? Because we're going further out into the estuary.
Well, we're getting onto the sands, but the tide hasn't long gone, so it's left quite a bit of water behind, and a lot more will run off over the period before it comes back. But it's walking firmer now, as it will do, and we're almost to the Broomway where it would have been, which you could drive a vehicle on, ride a bike on, etc. We'll notice as well we have some tiny crustacea there, and they are baby winkles, millions and millions of them. And also an odd cast or two from a lugworm. Again, there are millions and millions of them.
John, I'm almost worried now because I set off having read, you know, a number of pieces about this pathway, and everyone said it was the deadliest place that you could be. So while we are sort of lilting wonderfully about the landscape, we can never forget that it is a dangerous place.
Well, we've actually reached what would have been the Broomway now. Not marked at all, as I said, hasn't been done for years. Yes, it's a foreboding place and can be terrible. And in the depths of winter, you may only see half a mile and so forth on a normal day when it's not foggy or anything else. But that's the weather conditions. But if you're here on a summer's day, it's gorgeous. I mean, it makes you feel like a child. you just want to run down the sands because the sun and everything and the temperature and the tide is just fabulous. So it can be very dangerous, but foolhardy man is to blame. Nature's there, but don't abuse it. So we have now we've moved on, but we have almost 3 miles to go. We can see the Maypole opposite the Haven Gore Creek in the distance, which is still 3/4 of a mile away.
And it stands like a thin black line sort of pointing up to the sky there.
In the distance we can see, we can't because the cloud is gone, but I could see the radar station. That was our goal, which is 3 miles away.
Right. And
So
you
we
say
need
better
to
get
get
a
on.
move on.
I think you've got to remember that we're here because we want to be here. The people who died were here because they had to be here. And there's a difference. You know, the doctor who lost his life coming back from treating a patient had to be here. The apothecary who also lost his life had to be here. The shepherd who lost his life had to be here. The 2 girls who drowned, one of the body was found by her future husband. She had to be here. The other girl, her body was found by her father. They had to be here. We don't have to be here.
In our group, walking out across the Broomway, is Thea Berman. And Thea, you're the artistic director of the Estuary Festival.
Yes, that's right. Yeah.
How would you describe what that is?
So Estuary Festival is all about shining a spotlight on the Thames Estuary as a place. It's kind of celebrating the stories, the places, the people through a variety of different artistic activities.
It's one heck of a trek,
It really is.
And in some ways, at one point it's quite monotonous because it's the same underfoot, this chocolate brown and water. But then, I'm doing it a disservice.
I would say that we are. I mean, we're walking over a sort of mirror world. It's like being on another planet in some ways, isn't it?
I presume any visit's going to be different because of the landscape, the weather, but you're always going to have the most extraordinary wide landscape. I mean, we were walking on, you just feel it's a strange plane between earth and sky. It's like a thin line, isn't it, between the earth that we're walking on and this vast skies above our heads.
I think that's why it's so inspiring for artists, because it's a place that's always changing, it's always transforming. We're here at low tide, but you know, we'll come back in a couple of hours' time and we'll be swimming. And you know, having that constantly changing nature of the environment is just such a kind of source of inspiration, really.
And even our footsteps, when we embed in a bit of sand, are just washed away within seconds, aren't they? You look back and you can't see where we've walked. It's gone. The wind isn't our back, it's always that way. But also it's pushing the pools of water in front of us, and you see how when we go over the mud sand, there's almost like glints of gold. Do you see that? And then it disappears when we cast our shadow over it. Isn't it?
Yeah, the undulating mud and the way that the sun is reflecting off the different ripples, it's just endlessly inspiring.
Lots of worm casts.
I was reminded the other week by an artist that Nye Bevan, who, when he was conceiving the NHS, took a boat out into the middle of the estuary and to help him with his kind of thinking and formulating of that. So it's not just artists that are inspired, it's kind of the greatest people who've shaped our lives, really.
And I love, you know, when we get a rise of the sand and the texture of it, it's maybe like a cobbled path. in sand, or the back of, I don't know, like some sort of prehistoric creature. Maybe I'm just a little over the top.
Yeah, no, definitely, you know, we could be walking over the back of some kind of reptile, maybe.
Yeah, it's scales. Yeah.
And what we've got here is 35,000 acres of mudflat. And in the 1850s, there was a plan to put a seawall right from Shoebury right the way up to the Dengie Peninsula. And in this whole lot, this extra 30,000 acres was going to be put under the plan. Rennie, the Victorian engineer, I think Bazalgette was involved as well. They got the Act of Parliament and they started to build it, but as with such a huge project, they just run out of money.
When the tide starts to come in, how quickly will it fill up this landscape? We are
Quicker than you can walk. Quicker than you can walk. Yeah.
quicker than you can walk, quicker than you could run.
How long are you going to run for? I mean, people who died on here, I suppose initially there'd have been panic because they were disorientated. Then there would be exhaustion, and then of course there'd be death. And that wouldn't be a nice way to go. But you know, you can, because it's so featureless, you can easily deviate from the straight line, as people did. My father-in-law, who's a seasoned foulness man, was out here wildfowling one night, and he lost his directions, lost his bearings. And he said if it wasn't for seeing the headlamps of a car, so he knew which way was which, and therefore he headed in the right direction. Otherwise, he'd have been another one there.
And even the poles themselves. Imagine you're lost and you're seeking out the next pole, and the finding of that, and how it would lift your spirits, but equally you're floundering about and you can't find that marker.
And they're not very high off the ground. You know, it's just a besom broom. It's just the broom above the ground, not the pole. And yeah, if you miss the next one, you would retrace your steps because your footprints will still be there back to the original marker, and then try and find it again. But all the time you're doing that, the tide's coming in and you're losing time.
Should they put them back?
I don't think so.
Why not?
I think we've established that this is a fairly dangerous track, and I don't think you want to encourage the amateur, as it were, to launch out on a featureless area. Perhaps I'm being reaction, but I think one should just let things be.
And you can feel how tired we're getting. You know, just striding out. Saps your strength.
Of course, yeah.
And then the wind catches us, pushes us off to one side, and then we gather ourselves again, and then splash through some of these pieces of water which are being whipped up by the wind.
You know, although it's flat, it's not easy, is it?
No.
You've got to be fit to be able to do it.
Right. So, John has said we need to keep walking.
Right.
We need to find the firm sand. He's gone 100 yards or so ahead of us, so we'll keep on moving. And when I say we, I'm also joined by journalist Tom King. You've written about the estuary. You've had great adventures exploring the whole Thames estuary. When you were writing your book, Travels Around the Estuary.
It's called the Thames Estuary Trail.
Yeah. You did this area, did you?
Absolutely, yeah. One of the things about the Broomway is it's got this sense of menace. And it's very exhilarating to walk because of that. It's not just the vast skies and the huge horizons, but it's the sense of danger. If you wander off, you know, as hundreds of people have done, it becomes the Doomway. It's a serial killer, this path, innocent as it looks at the moment. So there's that real sense of observation. I remember, but the other thing, of course, is we're off Foulness Island, which is a secret military base, full of, still very much the sort of cutting edge of potential nuclear conflict, and still very much under the control of the military. So when I did the walk, it was the first time I'd lived in this area all my life. It was the first time I ever set foot on Foulness Island, and I will never forget the experience of just sort of coming out the seawall and seeing this vast space of the Baffin Sands. So it was the starting point, and then I walked around the estuary. I think it had never been done before, but right as far as the Queen Elizabeth II Bridge, and then back, a sort of mirror on the shore that we can see far away on the other side of the estuary.
But are you saying these Maplin Sands, this space, sort of inspired you to explore the whole of the Thames estuary?
Yeah, very, very much so, because it's... I don't know if I can say this on the BBC, but I refer to the estuaries, the bum end of the Thames. So if you think of the Thames is sort of gracious progress from its source in the Cotswold through Oxford and past Windsor Castle and past the Houses of Parliament. It's an illustrious river. And then it suddenly, at least back then, it all goes to pieces. And it becomes this great sort of open, rather sort of shaggy industrial area. But then, beyond that, you get onto this huge open space, this great area of sand and mud, and the sense of sort of the apex of the river and the North Sea. And you are in look at the vastness of the skies, the vastness of the sands, and how many places can you stand here? So 30 miles from London. We're really 30 miles from the capital city, and we are looking out over a wilderness. And where else can you stand? Look to the horizon and not see a single building. And these great, comfortable skies. We're close to Hadley Castle, which was one of John Constable's great inspirations. He painted several pictures there and caught the drama of this.
Yes, and we are in that drama because so quickly there was a huge sweep of wind across the sands. Didn't you feel that, Tom? And then the clouds have separated and the view has got bigger and brighter. Blues and whites and dove grey and dark threatening greys. Oh my goodness. Oh dear, Tom, look behind us.
Yeah, it's not
it's
only
very
it's
dark
not only
looking.
Constable country, it's Shakespearean.
Yes, it's magnificent.
It's got everything here, and it's never the same from one minute to the next.
Broad shafts of sunlight breaking through the dark and hitting the sand places that we are walking across now. Oh!
So, it never fails when the very first time you set eyes on this. Nobody's ever seen a landscape like this before. Seeing Baffin Sands. It's unique. The nearest thing to that I'm aware of is Morecambe Bay in Lancashire. In the 70s, it was one of the prospective sites for the third London Airport, until they realised that it was just, the bird strikes alone that it's seen in Lord. That was nature seeing off the sort of grandest infrastructure project you can imagine. So it ended up in a different part of Essex instead, Stansted Airport.
Stop again over for a minute or two. And Peter, actually, he's got a long pole. He's got a blade on the end.
If you look, so I've just cut into the runway and you see about a half-inch of sand, and then you got the rest of it as mud.
But it's black.
Yeah, black.
Yeah.
See that we're on the sort of firm sand here.
You're turning a sod over.
What is it? Yeah.
So the layer cake is there, isn't it?
Yeah.
So the brown bit on the top there, you do it again. As soon as you dig a hole, it fills up. So there's the brown mud.
That's all the sand. It's all silt.
Almost like in a straight line. And underneath you have the black. Still silt, but black and full of nutrients. I'm just going to get some of this black stuff. Oh, it's so soft. I mean, there's no texture in that at all. And oh gosh, yes, it does smell. It's as black as your boot, right? Black as our wellies. And there's strands of maybe a bit of vegetation. And look, filthy.
If you left it on your hands and it dried, you just tap your hands and it's all gone. Excellent. Not sticky at all.
It's like chocolate icing on top of a dark Black Forest cake, isn't it? That's what it looks like. just piece of metal. It is...
Shrapnel.
Oh, it's a big chunk of it, isn't it? Haven't it? Yeah.
Which has been blown from a compound 300 metres away. To the left of us, we have a very large lump, which was a 25-ton cage, which retained explosives. But things went wrong, the cage exploded, and it blew this massive bit that weighed almost half a ton, 500 yards. Things don't always go right.
Another reason why you have to be careful when you're going over this landscape for this shrapnel from military testing equipment and training could be underfoot. Oh dear, that's more terrifying. Think about it. It's been there a while, John, because it's got little barns over it.
That's right.
Right. I'm just going to stop for a minute. Look back over where we've walked. Everybody, we made it. Yay. Worth every step, John. Thank you for your leadership.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks. I can certainly see the danger. So you wouldn't encourage people to head out on this pathway on their own?
No, not at all.
Without guidance and advice? So I'm glad to have your company. You and Peter have done this walk so many times.
Cup of tea and a slice of cake?
Oh, come on, come on. Best words I've heard all day.
Up in Country was presented by Helen Mark. The producer was Robin Markwell. This is BBC Radio 4, now time for Farming Today this week with Kaz Graham.
Good morning. Today, bird flu in cows.
I guess the thing is that these cattle weren't really sick, so it could have been happening anyway and no one realised, which is a little bit worrying.
The future of farrowing crates for pigs.
Once you start showing signs of farrowing, we'll restrict it. About 24 hours later, once we decide that the piglets are strong enough, we then open that pen up and the pig is then free to roam around the pen.
And yet more rain.
It's been total disaster, if you want the truth. We've got part of our farm we've hardly used since last October.
But first, who should decide whether an area of land is of such great environmental importance that it should be given legal protection? Currently, it's the government's advisor for the natural environment, Natural England, which has the power to designate sites of special scientific interest. But a group of Conservative MPs wants that to change, with the final decision being made by the Secretary of State for Environment, Food and Rural Affairs instead. The idea has been introduced to Parliament as a private member's bill, with the backing of former DEFRA Secretary Therese Coffey and 2 former DEFRA ministers. But some environmentalists are concerned. Here's Richard Benwell, CEO of Wildlife and Countryside Link, which is a coalition of charitable organisations.
Natural England are the experts. They're the ones who are able to say this is a significant bit of wildlife habitat that supports amazing species, let's look after it. And it's really important that Natural England's power to protect places goes undiminished.
So what are you afraid of? What would be the fear if the Secretary of State was the person that had the power to make those decisions?
The worry is that the people who are expert in spotting the places to be protected for nature go with a recommendation to the Secretary of State, and that then short-term interests, strong political lobbyists trump that good scientific advice, and instead of having something that looks after the long-term interests of our natural environment, we end up with something where a short-term political whim ends up driving decision-making.
I put that concern to Derek Thomas, the Conservative MP who proposed the idea.
The legislation that I've supported through the Environment Act and other legislation means that actually the government legally has to promote and enhance nature and recover nature, and I just don't think that stacks up. What you have at the moment is a system where Natural England can identify an area that they believe should be designated. They then do the homework and present all the scientific research and data, and then it's Natural England that mark their own homework.
So people will be concerned that vested interests of, say, I don't know, economic vested interests, land vested interests, would be able to lobby the Secretary of State, you know, in an informal way to influence decisions.
I understand that concern. Because of legislation that's there, I don't think the Secretary of State
the Environment Secretary to interrogate the science, you say, and scrutinise Natural England's decisions. I mean, how is the Secretary of State equipped to do that? On what basis would they be making that decision when Natural England is the body that advises government on the natural environment?
Well, we know that DEFRA has an awful lot of very experts who can scrutinise the work that Natural England have done and then make a recommendation to the Secretary of State, which is how it would happen. But I just think that this process would mean that Natural England would step up. We know from their own figures that many of the SSSI sites so far are not in a good state of repair. We could lift the standard across the country if we approach it slightly different and just modernise legislation that at the moment they're working with.
Wouldn't the solution be basically just more funding for Natural England so it can do the job it already has to do in a more effective way?
Well, that might be the solution. I haven't looked at that in detail, but what I do know is that one of the questions we repeatedly presented to Natural England was, did they have the staff to do this scale of work? And they were confident they had the staff to do it. So I didn't get the impression they're arguing for more money.
That's MP Derek Thomas. Well, we contacted DEFRA and they told us that the Environment Secretary will respond in due course. But this idea really got you talking. Producer Heather is here to help me go through our inbox. Heather, what have you got?
Hi, Kaz. OK, so I've got an email here from Jean Bishop who says important decisions about nature and the environment should remain with the scientists. Fund Natural England fully, she says, and keep the risk of politicising these decisions out of it. She goes on, the erosion of trust in scientific evidence is costing the planet and